welcome along to our latest Eredivisie review. We'll bring you the best of the action from round 23 of the season, all the major talking points and, of course, all of the goals from another eventful weekend in the Dutch top flight. 8 fixtures on the way, and with only a third of the season remaining, the stakes are rising all the time. We start this week on Friday night in Deventer. Both Go-Ahead Eagles and Sparta Rotterdam had been on good runs recently until suffering damaging defeats last time out. Go-Ahead were attempting to bounce back from a 4-2 loss at Heracles, and it was they who threatened first, Victor Edvardsen not troubling the target when well placed. Sparta's 4-game unbeaten sequence in the Eredivisie had ended 6 days earlier with a 3-0 derby defeat at Feyenoord, leaving them still third from bottom in the standings. Mitchell van Bergen's ball-in caused some concern for Jari de Bousser in the Eagles' goal as the visitors attempted to respond. Go-Ahead slip-up in Almelo the previous weekend snapped a 6-game unbeaten sequence in the league for the Cup semi-finalists, and they were struggling to impose themselves in the opening quarter of this one. Having won the ball well, Patrick van Aanholt went close to capitalising for Sparta, still searching for his first goal since signing in November. Go-Ahead lost top scorer Oliver Edvardsen to Ajax during the winter transfer window and are now looking for others to step up in front of goal. Jakob Brøm has been the one to do so since then, but it was he trying to provide the service here. The Dane's delivery denied by keeper Nicolai. Van Aanholt, though, had stayed down in what was to prove an early setback for Sparta. The experienced left-back has been a regular starter since his arrival from Galatasaray and was a title winner on loan at PSV last season, but he pulled up off the ball and would have to go off with just 25 minutes played. The Venezuelan Tio Quintera was summoned as Van Aanholt's replacement. The match's major moment would arrive shortly afterwards. It was just past the half-hour mark when Go-Ahead went ahead. Jiva Ezekiel, on loan from neighbours Feyenoord, was the Sparta player dispossessed in dangerous territory by Victor Edvardsen, who played in Brøm to do the rest decisively. Goals in back-to-back games for the Dane, taking his tally to 9 for the season in the Eredivisie as the Eagles' new top scorer. A slip from Ezekiel, ruthlessly punished, as the Eagles attempted to extend their unbeaten run in this fixture to 5 matches. A slip in the stands, caught on camera, wasn't to prove as costly though. Impressively, nothing spilt and no damage done. Less happy at having to take a watching brief was Van Aanholt. Not quite the Valentine's night he'd had planned. Sparta went into the game 3 points above the bottom 2 and 4 points short of safety. They'd only won 4 times in the Eredivisie all season, although 3 of those have come away from home. Shinsuke Mito wasn't far away from getting them back on terms in this one. Indeed, the Spartans were ending the first half strongly in pursuit of parity. A strong run from Van Bergen called de Bousser back into action before the break. From the Belgian keeper that a length of the field move began that saw Go-Ahead go within a whisker of doubling their lead before the interval. Oliver Antman has been a leading chance creator for his team this term, but here the Finn was unlucky not to find the finish. Lay getting a touch to it onto the post. Second at that stage would have made a big difference to the mood. Go-Ahead knew the importance of this game given their next 3 fixtures consist of Ajax away and then 2 successive matches with PSV. The first of those is away in the last 4 of the Cup as the club attempt to reach the final for the first time in their history. Since announcing they will cover the cost of the tickets for the travelling fans. On the field on Friday they maintained their search for a second goal in the second half, this period of pressure ending with Olay saving a strike from the Spaniard, Eric Jansana. And so the pattern continued. The home side were certainly looking more likely to extend their lead than they were to lose it. Olay was called into action again shortly afterwards to keep out Antman, whose deflected effort spelled danger. From the corner, the ball eventually came for Edvardsson to have a go. Nearly but not quite from the Swedish striker, who remains without a goal since the turn of the year. The only frustration for coach Paul Simonis was that his side were unable to score that second, and it left them susceptible heading into the closing stages. Some good work from Sparta sub Noki Torresson helped set up Ajax loanee Christian Klinsson in the search for an equaliser. And it needed an excellent save from de Busse to deny it. Another Sparta sub, Mohamed Nasso, was next to have a go. He also went close, but de Busse wasn't required this time. Some go-ahead Eagles held on and returned to winning ways. Some way for Simonis to celebrate his 40th birthday. He said afterwards he'd reward his players with a weekend off and treat them to cake on Monday morning. Delighted with what he described as a mature display against a club he previously worked for as a youth coach. But it's back-to-back defeats for Maurice Stein's Sparta after they had been showing signs of recovery. Go ahead sitting pretty in 7th though, now unbeaten in 7 home league games. Two of the top 3 met in Eindhoven in a huge showdown on Saturday. Although both PSV and Utrecht have been struggling for form of late, handing the advantage to Ajax. PSV lost the leadership last week after suffering successive draws in the Eredivisie. Indeed, the champions have won just one of their last 5 league matches. Peter Bosch's side came into this one off the back of a 2-1 defeat at Juventus on Tuesday in the Champions League, with their knockout phase playoff tie very much in the balance. But it was full focus first on third-placed Utrecht, who despite recent disappointments remained unbeaten away from home in the Eredivisie all season. This was expected to be a real test on their travels though, and it would certainly prove a busy afternoon for Vasilis Barkas in the visiting goal. He denied Gus Thiel early on. He'd been teed up by a Johan Bakayoko backheel as PSV started strongly. Unbeaten in 38 home league matches, PSV had been held here by Willem II a week ago, which cost them top spot and were out to respond. Thiel against Barkas, take 2. The outcome the same as the first time around. There was, if anything, an even better save from the goalkeeper from the resulting corner. Barkas did brilliantly to stop Armando Obispo's header. But the centre-back didn't have to wait long to score his first goal of the season. The circumstances were similar, and this time Barkas was beaten. Obispo, on only his 3rd Eredivisie start of the season, on target for the first time since September of 2022. And PSV had the perfect platform, just 11 minutes in. Utrecht had had a dreadful couple of weeks following a cup quarter-final exit at Heracles with a shock home defeat against bottom club Almere City last time out. So this was a test of character for Ron Jans' team, and they answered it impressively. Indeed, Utrecht were behind for just 5 minutes. Another centre-back on the score sheet as Mike van der Hoorn headed home the equaliser from Jens Turnstra's cross. 6 without a clean sheet now in the Eredivisie for Peter Bosch's stuttering side. Van der Hoorn managing to stay on side before converting his 3rd goal of the Eredivisie season, and it was 1-1 already. The home crowd had been criticised by Noah Lang last week for a lack of support. Notable maybe that the winger began on the bench for this one. Ivan Perisic had scored the PSV goal in Turin on Tuesday as they strive to reach the last 16 of the Champions League. He and Bakayoko were preferred to Lang out wide from the start in this one and came close to combining as they set about trying to re-establish their advantage. The Croatian couldn't convert when the cross came in. Some confusion between him and teammate Thiel, and it was obvious all was not well in Eindhoven. The champions had started their title defence with 10 straight wins this season, but that form seems a fast-fading memory right now after recent stumbles. The one consolation for Bosch in this game is that they were creating plenty of chances in contrast to recent weeks. But Barkas was in brilliant form, denying Richard Ledesma and Joey Veerman in quick succession, before the latter was also thwarted by Sieber Horremans on the goal line. Signs of improvement, said Bosch afterwards, but not the clinical touch required. Utrecht hadn't been beaten on their travels in the Eredivisie since the end of March last year at Feyenoord. 14 away games without defeat since then. But they were certainly under pressure in this one. When Barkas was beaten by Vermann's effort, he was spared by his crossbar and back in position to gather Obispo's follow-up. Misfortune rather than wayward finishing, costing the champions this time. So it remained all square going into the second half, when Utrecht were first to threaten. Another Tunstrup all in saw Sebastian Aller denied by Walter Benitez, as the Ivorian still searches for his first Eredivisie goal since returning on loan from Dortmund. Paxton Aronson's effort was blocked away as well. At the other end, there was an element of fortune in the link-up between Bakayoko and Luc de Jong. When the ball broke for the Belgian, he was foiled by the busy Barkas. No change to that particular narrative in the second half, with the Greek international continuing to keep his team on terms. Another setback for PSV came on the hour. Aronson was booked by referee Serdar Guzaboyuk for this challenge on Gus Thiel. The 7th yellow card of the Americans' Eredivisie season. And it was a particularly painful one for Thiel. Although Pader Bosch was plotting changes at this stage anyway, his mind was made up for him with this one. The midfielder was taken off as part of a double change, as he and Bakayoko made way for Ismail Saibari and Noah Lang. Thiel joining an injury list that already included the likes of Malik Tillman and Ricardo Pepi. Lang had scored the PSV goal in the 1-1 draw with Willem II a week earlier, after which he made his comments about the crowd. So something of a mixed reception greeted his introduction. The home side had already made a change at the interval when Adama Nagalo replaced the goalscorer Obispo, and the Burkina Faso international was then involved in a flashpoint with Utrecht forward David Min. But in the first half, Min was maybe fortunate to stay on the field. Insult added to injury for PSV, with not much going their way. They have a remarkable record at home to Utrecht, winning 36 of the previous 37 meetings between the clubs here in the Eredivisie and drawing the other one. But they were struggling to get the better of Barkas. Perisic, the latest to suffer against the goalkeeper. From Vermann's corner, a free header for Jerdy Schouten, which he wasn't able to make the most of. Perisic's goal at Juventus was his 5th for the club since signing from Hajduk Split for this season, but only one of those has come in the Eredivisie. Barkas remained intent on preventing him adding to that in what was becoming a recurring theme. After all of that PSV pressure had gone unrewarded, they were made to pay at the other end. A real twist in the tale arrived heading for the closing quarter of an hour. Paxton Aronson heading home Oscar Fraulo's deep delivery to stun the Philips Stallion and put Utrecht in front against the odds. 6 Eredivisie goals now for Aronson on loan from Eintracht Frankfurt, a career-best league return. And it had those from the Cathedral City dreaming of a first league win at PSV since October of 1980. There was an almost instant response from the home side. There needed to be. But when de Jong fired over the bar from this type of territory, it only deepened the gloom. Utrecht then summoned Noah Ahayo off the subs bench late on. Player Marcel Brands and Ernie Stewart had been trying to bring to PSV as a temporary replacement for the injured Pepi. It was a deal that didn't get done on deadline day, and instead he was on to face them here. The game was heading for the last minute of the 90, with PSV still staring at a first home league defeat since RZ beat them 1-0 here in November of 2022. And when subs Saibara failed to stretch Barkas when well placed, he certainly looked to be running out of time. But a minute into additional time and relief for the champions. Even a point was enough to take them back to the top, albeit potentially only briefly, and they did finally come up with that vital equaliser, thanks to substitute Isaac Babadi, who stepped off the bench to score a timely first goal of the season, and only the second of his Eredivisie career. Barkas was finally beaten again, if only just. Lang deserving a big slice of the credit for his part in the creation of the goal that made it 2-2. But it still wasn't quite the end of the story. Utrecht, determined to become only the third club ever to avoid defeat away to PSV, Ajax, Feyenoord and AZ in the same season, nearly came up with the perfect riposte. Ahayo was in all sorts of space on the counter-attack, and he in turn picked out fellow Serb Miliano Jonatans, who seemingly had the goal at his mercy, but missed it. Jans refused to criticise the player afterwards, but said the striker will still be thinking about this one when he's 84 years old. Without a doubt the biggest chance I've missed, admitted Jonatans, who's still waiting for his first Utrecht goal. It might have proved even more costly had this crept in right at the end, as the drama continued all the way to the final whistle, before both teams had to settle for a point apiece. Despite conceding the late equaliser, it appeared a better point for Utrecht, particularly in the historical context of their struggles in Eindhoven. Still unbeaten away from home in the Eredivisie this season, although they're 5 without a win now for the first time in nearly 3 years. Just 1 win in 6 league games for PSV. This was a third straight draw. Like PSV, Feyenoord had been in Champions League action in midweek. Their 1-0 first leg win at home to Milan had been the first game in charge for interim coach Pascal Boschart, who made his Eredivisie debut in the dugout at NAC Breda on Saturday. The tone for a rather fraught affair was perhaps set just a minute in. Sidney van Hooijdonk and Timon Wellenreuter not on the friendliest of terms after this early collision. Feyenoord, down in 5th in the table, had made the decision to part company with Brian Priske despite last week's derby win over Sparta Rotterdam. They responded well with that victory in Europe, but were on the back foot in Breda in the early stages of this one. Elias Mar Omerson, NAC's Icelandic striker, missed a major chance in just the 9th minute of the match. Carl Herfken's team had found themselves 3-0 down inside half an hour on their way to a 5-0 defeat at RKC 6 days earlier, so were determined to start strongly this time. 19-year-old Leo Sauer is on loan in Breda from Feyenoord and wasn't too far away from an early goal against his parent club. Both teams were missing key players through injury, Feyenoord with 7 absentees and NAC 6. The visitors felt the absence of captain Quinten Timber in particular, with a knee injury sustained against Milan. It meant extra onus on Jakob Modder in midfield. He forced the corner, from which David Hansko came close to putting the visitors in front. The centre-back denied by a centre-forward, with Van Hooijdonk perfectly positioned on his own goal line to keep that one out. NAC were facing Feyenoord for the first time at home in the Eredivisie since April of 2019, having lost 2-0 at De Kuip in September following their return to the top flight. And they certainly appeared fired up for this one. Maxime Boussi squaring up to Kurelinci Hartmann, who'd been penalised for his challenge on Omerson. Referee Dennis Higler was being kept busy. Omerson had scored for NAC in his last 4 home league matches and was attempting to become the first player to do so in 5 in a row for them since Matthew Amoa back in 2008. And he will certainly feel he should have done so in this first half. This time he was just unable to find the far post finish after some fine approach play from Sauer. So it remained goalless going into the second half, with Feyenoord out to avoid losing successive away games in the Eredivisie for the first time in over 4 years. Some neat link-up play between Anis Hadj Musa and Javaro Reed created a sight of goal for midweek match winner Igor Paschal, but he was unable to beat Daniel Bielitsa. NAC continued to remain a threat themselves though, and home hopes were briefly raised just before the hour. An impressive move ended with Boussi going down on the edge of the box and referee Higler pointing to the penalty spot. It was Modder who made the challenge, but replay showed it was anything but clear-cut. VAR had to decide where the offence happened, as there was a case for it being outside the area, but also if there had actually been a foul in the first place, as any contact was only minimal at best. Higler later explained he'd asked to have another look for himself on the pitchside monitor so he could seek clarification in line with the protocols, and needed a lengthy look before making up his mind. The official finally returned to the field to overturn the penalty decision and didn't give the free kick either. No foul was the conclusion he came to. If that was a let-off for Feyenoord, they themselves would be frustrated later in the half by another VAR call. The game was into its last 20 minutes when Igor Paschal was played in behind the NAC Breda defence and came up with a composed finish. The match winner against Milan was away and celebrating again, to the annoyance of the home fans, only to realise this one had been flagged offside. It looked the closest of calls as the technology was relied on again in another match-defining moment. There's no doubting the quality of the finish from a player who's been in fine form this season and was hoping he just scored for the third game in a row. But ultimately this one didn't count as the offside decision was upheld. And it was every bit as close as it had looked. The Brazilian just on the wrong side of the finest of margins. NAC had failed to score just once at home in the Eredivisie all season. Champions PSV, the only team to stop them on their own patch. And they certainly hadn't given up hope of finding a way through against Feyenoord. Kasper Kostos reached the ball in from Kamal Soa, only to find the outside of the post. Deep delivery from the corner kept the danger alive, but Soa's fierce strike struck Modder. A vital block which came at some personal cost to the Polish player. But it helped preserve a point and meant that Boschart became the 9th successive Feyenoord coach to avoid defeat in his opening Eredivisie game in charge. But it was far from enough to satisfy him, as this one ended goalless. Saturday's final game came from Tilburg, which Willem II and Groningen started level on points, with identical records of 6 wins, 6 draws and 10 defeats each in the Eredivisie so far this season. The visitors were actually 3 places worse off on goal difference, so tight is the table right now, but they were the ones celebrating just 5 minutes in. Dave Kwakman, who joined in January on loan from RZ, was perfectly positioned to profit and score his first ever Eredivisie goal after Luciano Valente's effort had been cleared off the line. Groningen, aiming for back-to-back wins for the first time since the opening 2 matches of the season, were off to the perfect start. 10 minutes in, and the Tricolor had a glimpse of goal of their own. Amar Fatah's effort didn't extend Etienne Varson. The Pride of the North had beaten NAC a week earlier, only a second victory in their last 8 games. But they soon had a second goal in this one. Valente provided the service, and Stier Resink a cultured finish to double the lead in style. Like the Virgil van Dijk-inspired trademark celebration, in honour said the players of the part the former Groningen defender had played in inspiring this performance, thanks to a motivational video message he'd sent them for the pre-match briefing. It was only Resink's second Eredivisie goal of the season, and they both come against Willem II. He was also on target in a 2-0 home win at the end of November. Not since their opening away game of the season at RKC had Groningen won on their travels in the top flight. But this was one-sided stuff from the start as they set about changing that. The pressure on Thomas Diddle on Hurdle's goal continued in relentless fashion, the Frenchman keeping this one out at the expense of a corner. And from that came goal number 3. It was only cleared the way of Tika de Jonge, who thumped in emphatically, able to join in the celebrations as well after his first ever senior goal. Groningen had only scored twice in their last 7 away matches in the Eredivisie, but had 3 in a shade over the first 20 minutes in Tilburg. Such a lead so early took some getting used to, admitted boss Dick Lukian afterwards. Willem II have been struggling since the turn of the year, just 2 points taken from their first 5 games of 2025, and they needed a route back into this one. Cisse Sandro was close to providing it. A deliberate dink from the Belgian only just cleared the crossbar. Their form in front of their own fans in particular has suffered recently. Just 1 win in the last 8 here at home before this. You certainly sense they needed at least 1 back before the break to give themselves a shot. But that was proving elusive, despite some prolonged periods of pressure and possession. Kian Varsen, the next to go, unrewarded in front of goal. Indeed, Groningen might have had more of their own before the first half was finished. Continue to work hard and stick to the game plan, and performances like these, said Lukian, could become the norm rather than the exception. Tom van Bergen was thwarted, though, when in search of their 4th. The final major opening of the first half went the way of the home side, but there was no change of fortune in front of goal for them. Sandra's flick well dealt with by Varsen, which helped ensure Groningen would take that commanding 3-0 lead into the interval. A different story in the second half then. Willem II certainly hoped so and started it strongly. Finally grabbing themselves a goal just 4 minutes after the restart. Jesse Bosch did brilliantly in restoring some hope. The former Twente player scoring his 4th Eredivisie goal of the season. He took it really smartly. Still no clean sheet away from home for Groningen in the Eredivisie since October of 2022. Just the response Peter Maes was hoping to see from his side at this stage. These clubs had met 3 times last season, drawing both Eredivisie meetings in coming up together from the second tier, with Groningen winning 3-1 here in the second round of the Cup. They might have improved on that scoreline on Saturday, neither Valente nor Van Bergen able to add to the tally from in front of goal after some inventive approach play. Fine footwork, but no finish this time. The Tricolour hadn't quite been able to build on that goal back from Bosch just after the break, but still had a quarter of the contest to play when Sandra provided another shot on target at least. The goalkeeper right behind that one. And it was from Varsen's clearance that Valente was almost able to run on and clinch victory. Although the defence got back to him, the Groningen-born Italian under-20 international was eventually able to get his shot away. But Diddelon hurdle was equal to it. Time was not on the Tilburgers' side by now. They had picked up an impressive point at PSV last time out, but were missing the opportunity to build on that. Bosch coming the closest to grabbing another one back. That really would have set up a nervy finish. Instead, they can never quite get close enough to undoing the early damage. With a point, the busy Varsen kept out Emilio Kera and also prevented the corner. Just another one back for Willem II would still have been too little too late. Groningen's win remarkably lifted them all the way from 15th to 8th in the table, 3 points above their opponents who slipped 3 spots as a result of this defeat. On to Sunday's matches now, and we start in Nijmegen, where NEC took on the bottom club Almere City, who were attempting to build on last week's shock win at Utrecht. One of the major talking points from this one came right at the start. The game was only in its 3rd minute when NEC launched a productive counter-attack that led to Vito van Krooij breaking clear, and ultimately to Sami Uwisa putting the home team in front. His 3rd goal in 4 games was allowed to stand despite Almere City appeals for handball. It was looked at length by VAR, who gave the goal to the frustration of the visitors. And to make matters worse, referee Edwin van der Graaf admitted after the match it shouldn't have stood due to the fact Sonchi Hansen had been offside earlier in the move, but VAR didn't have access to the footage that proved it. The official called it a very annoying situation, sentiment shared and some by Almere boss Jeroen Rijsdijk. He was, though, delighted by the response of his side in adversity, as fueled by a perceived sense of injustice, they set about trying to level the scores. Tom Haya may well have done so, but for an excellent save from Robin Ruffs. Stop made even better considering the deflection Haya's hit Tuck on the way through. Almere City had recorded their first win of the Eredivisie season in this reverse fixture back in October at the 10th attempt. They remained 4 points adrift at the bottom going into this game and 7 short of even a relegation playoff place. The win at Utrecht last week was their first away from home for almost a year. But backing it up at the Goffert Stadium was proving a tough task, with the visiting defence coming under sustained pressure. Plenty to pick through here, including a possible penalty appeal when Brian Linson's shot was blocked. This time the handball decision went Almira's way, and it wasn't given. It would have been harsh with defender Hamdi Akujobi given the benefit of the doubt. Mies Hudemaker's deflected strike also gave the visitors a scare. They were riding their luck at times in attempting to stay in the game. Another case in point came late in the first half, with Rogier Maia's side continuing to apply the pressure. Van Crooij's cross missing everybody in the middle, coming back off the far post. Fine margins and all that. A second at that stage would certainly have been significant. Almere then made the most of that reprieve almost immediately, as it was they who scored just before half-time instead. Haya swung the cross in, and Spanish centre-back Visus met it decisively. His first goal for the club since joining on loan from Real Betis. A powerful and well-placed header that changed the mood almost entirely heading for the interval. NAC had lost only 2 of their previous 8 home games in the Eredivisie. Ajax and Utrecht the only visiting teams to leave the Goffert Stadium with all 3 points in that time. But having ended a 15-game winless run on their top-flight travels last week, Almere were playing with renewed conviction in the second of 3 consecutive away matches for them. Charles Andreas Brim looked in the mood to complete the turnaround, but his finish didn't quite match the footwork. Then with the game opening up, confusion between Linson and Brian Pereira proved costly. The teammates getting in each other's way as they both attempted to restore their advantage. Neither wanting to see that again. There was a real ebb and flow to the game at this stage, with both teams believing they could go on and win it. Next, an effort just over the top from Joachim Ritmeister van der Kamp for the bottom club. Almere kept coming with belief building. The club's still hoping to upset the odds and stay in the Eredivisie for a 3rd straight year next season, despite such a difficult campaign so far. Those hopes were raised higher still when they did force the go-ahead goal late in the game. A perfectly placed first-time finish from Akujobi saw the fullback score his first ever Eredivisie goal, having netted 5 times in their promotion-winning season 2 years ago. He took the return from Cornelius Hansen and put the shot out of the reach of Ruffs. Piled the pressure on the long-serving Maya, with NAC Chief Executive Wilco van Schaik sat in the stands, listening to a section of the home fans turn against their manager. Maya insists he still feels he's affecting the players and has their support, despite admitting this display wasn't good enough. But the crowd were getting restless, their mood not helped by the referee having to step in after this collision between Ruffs and Junior Cadil, who was cautioned. Time running out for NAC. Maya said his side were naive in losing too many duels, but they did keep going until the end and at least rescued something in stoppage time. Bassa Onal's ball flicked on and in by Van Crooij to make it 2-2. 3 of his 6 league goals this season have now come in his last 4 matches. Happy in quotation marks is how Maya described his reaction, relieved to have escaped defeat from a match he admitted they'd expected to win. So too had the home fans, who made their dissatisfaction clear at the final whistle. Despite scoring early and late, what went on in between meant any celebrations over the late equaliser were distinctly muted. Neither side particularly happy with how this one ended up. With PSV, Utrecht and Feyenoord all having dropped points the day before and AZ not in action this weekend, Twente had the chance to make up ground on those above them. They took on an in-form RKC, who arrived in Enschede off the back of 3 straight wins. But it was Twente on top early on, as Kuiper's effort blocked away. The Tuckers will take a narrow 2-1 lead to Norway into the second leg of their Europa League playoff against Bodo Glimt on Thursday. And it was in the context of their continental commitments that coach Joseph Oosting was so pleased with how positively they started this game. Sam Stein coming close to making the pressure pay in the opening quarter. Twente didn't have too much longer to wait to make the breakthrough though, and it was certainly worth it for a goal of this quality. Sam Lammers was back in the side for the first time in 2025 after injury and announced his return in breathtaking fashion. He spoke afterwards of the amount of time he spends watching DVDs of his idol Dennis Bergkamp, and on this evidence it's paying off. There were more than a few Bergkamp comparisons made afterwards over the way Lammers took the pass from Bart van Rooij and gracefully gave his side the lead just before the half hour. RKC's recent revival has been remarkable. They're still second from bottom, but have won 3 on the bounce after just 1 victory from their first 19 games of the Eredivisie season. They put 5 past NAC Breda the previous week and saw Richanel Margaret go agonisingly close to levelling this up. Denied by a combination of Lars Unnestel and the post. Twente, though, have been in fabulous form in front of their own fans. They've not lost a home league game for a year now and had won 6 of the previous 7. Lammers continue to look lively in search of another one. He'd spotted the run of Dan Rots, but just couldn't quite pick him out precisely enough to make it pay. At this stage it seemed as if they might well need a second goal because the visitors were continuing to carve out chances of their own. The high press caused problems, with Mohamed Ihataren just unable to take advantage. He continues to impress in the RKC midfield, finally getting regular game time again and rebuilding his career. Ihataren says he's getting fitter and sharper all the time, but missed another big chance shortly after half-time. Those should have been goals, admitted the former PSV prospect afterwards. Though a possible offside against Margaret may ultimately have prevented that one from counting anyway, but the argument was rendered academic. Twente had needed a stoppage-time equaliser to rescue a 2-2 draw when these sides had last met in Volwijk in October, so were well aware of their task. Lammers came close to adding to his tally, but couldn't get the better of Jeroen Houven. Again, there would have been a very close offside call to be made had he done so. Oosting was concerned about the number of chances missed and felt his side became a bit sloppy in the second half. Pleased with the contribution of Lammers, he still called on the striker to exert himself more, saying he's spoken to him in the week about doing just that. And he appeared to be responding well to his manager's demands after that spell on the sidelines, briefly celebrating another goal shortly afterwards, sticking away the rebound after Stein's shot had been saved. But replay showed Lammers was actually coming back from an offside position when he got involved a little earlier in the move. So on review, that one didn't count, and 1-0 it stayed. An interested observer in Enschede was Maurice Stein. As we've seen, his Sparta Rotterdam side had lost at Go Ahead Eagles on Friday and were just 1 place and 3 points above RKC in the automatic relegation spots. So he needed a family favour from son Sem, who duly obliged, scoring Twente's second that effectively condemned the visitors to defeat. That one went down particularly well with Dad. Sem scoring his 18th goal of a remarkable Eredivisie season, 6 more than anybody else, as he continues to set the pace in the race for the Golden Boot. It's already 1 more than he managed in the whole of last season, and 2-0 was always likely to be enough for Twente. Say, to their credit, continued to come forward in search of something. They'd scored in each of their previous 10 league matches, dating back to defeated NAC in November, and nearly managed to extend that sequence in stoppage time. Faisal Al-Maziani struck the post to underline that this just wasn't their day. The full-time whistle went shortly afterwards. Twente's win taking them within a point of both Feyenoord and RZ above them, before attention turns to that delicately balanced Europa League tie and Thursday's trip to the Arctic Circle. Say's recent revival is checked, but Henk Fraser's side still created chances and now have the best part of a fortnight off before a huge home game with Fortuna Sittard. There were just 2 points, albeit 4 places, separating Pek Zwolle and Heerenveen before their meeting at the Mac 3 Park Stadion on Sunday. The visitors were the ones who had that narrow advantage over their opponents and started on the front foot when Dimitris Relis had a promising early look at goal, but put his effort well wide. Zwolle boss Johnny Jansen was up against his former club, now coached of course by Robin van Persie, who'd seen Heerenveen fail to win in their last 5 games in all competitions. Neither side had been in the best of form of late, which made this a close one to call, and so it proved. Just 2 wins in 8 for Pek Zwolle, but having been forced back in the early stages, they were able to get up the pitch thanks to Dylan Mbayo. The Belgian covered good ground before finding Odysseus Verlanas to provide the service for Dylan Venter to score clinically. That's something Zwolle's number 9 is doing plenty of at the moment. This took him into double figures for his Eredivisie season now. Only 3 players have managed more, 6 of those goals coming in his last 5 matches. Here he was the beneficiary of a really well-crafted opener as Zwolle hit the front just 11 minutes in. If Heerenveen might have felt a little hard done by given how the game had started, they soon set about trying to redress the balance. Levi Sman's deflected ball into the box eventually came through for Marcus Linde, who was foiled smartly by some sharp goalkeeping from Jesper Schendelaar. Bayo then led the charge up the other end, as he was proving adept at doing. It was Venter once more on the end of the shooting opportunity when it eventually came his way. But Mickey van der Hart, up against a former club, was right behind this one. Linde, a January signing from Västerås in his native Sweden, may feel frustrated not to have scored his first goal for his new club, having seemingly put himself in the perfect position. But he would have felt even worse had Zwolle then stormed forward to score themselves. Given Venter's current form in front of goal, he might have backed himself to do a bit better from there. Next to go close was Zwolle defender Anselmo McNulty, who flung out a foot but couldn't trouble the target this time. Van Persie had plenty to ponder at this point. His team were nearly in trouble again, heading for the final 5 minutes of the first half. Olivier Erson's big boot forward almost turned into the perfect ball for Mbayo. Belgium brought it down brilliantly before the danger was snuffed out just in time. Heerenveen summoned 17-year-old Esso Gurbuz at half-time. He'd scored as a sub in each of the last 2 games, his first 2 appearances in senior football. The Dutch under-18 international replaced Relis at the break, with Van Persie making his move early. But still it was Zwolle who were first to threaten in the second half. Jamiro Montero won the ball well high up the pitch, before it came for captain Dave van den Berg to have a go at goal. Was well fielded by Van der Hart. The Frisians had drawn their last 2 games, including a 3-all thriller with Twente last time out a week earlier, and they were determined to rediscover that attacking threat. This started from Van der Hart's long ball forward, before some neat combination play teed up Linde. Not for the first time in the contest, was stopped impressively by Schendelaar. Wasn't much of a reprieve for the home team this time though, as Alireza Jahanbakhsh drilled in the equaliser after all. Just a second goal of the season for the Iranian in his first campaign at the club. He was the one in position to profit after Gürbüz had kept the danger alive. One is how it had finished when the clubs last met at the Lenstra Stadion in October, and it was a struggle to separate them again this time. Gürbüz had certainly made a difference since being brought on at the break. He flashed one across the face of goal. Jahanbakhsh trying to tee up Oliver Browder, whose effort was blocked. Heerenveen, if anything, were looking the likely winners at this stage and had more of the momentum. But when the cross came his way, Jahanbakhsh didn't quite have the angle to squeeze in another one and complete the turnaround. Not quite the netting he was aiming for. Time was rapidly running out for either side to turn 1 point into 3. They now had just 3 additional minutes to do so. The Swallow maybe came the closest, but Browder denied Venter one last look at goal. And honours were to end even. In truth, a point apiece felt fair, with neither quite doing enough to go on and win it. Respect between them after a hard-fought affair. As for the second time this season in this fixture, it finished 1-1. And so to our final game of the weekend, which pitted together the only 2 clubs still unbeaten in the Eredivisie in 2025. Ajax had won 6 in a row and had the chance to go 2 points clear at the top if they could end Heracles' own 6-game run without defeat in the top flight. Brian Brobby had a big early chance to set them on their way, but fluffed his lines from a Steven Berghaus ball. Fresh from a Europa League win at Union Saint-Gilloise on Thursday, Ajax came into it with confidence. Kian Fitz-Jim was next to be presented with an inviting opportunity and should have stretched Fabian de Keyser more than he managed. Ajax opener looked inevitable and duly arrived shortly afterwards. A brilliant ball from Berghaus released Mika Götz, who marked his return to the starting lineup after a hamstring injury with a composed finish. Ajax imposing their authority already. Berghaus playing a major role from inside his own half as he celebrated signing a new 2-year contract extension with the club. And Götz, with a well-timed run, took full advantage. The record champions were aiming for a 7th successive league win for the first time since the first 7 games of Johnny Heitinger's spell in charge nearly 2 years ago. And a second goal before half-time would certainly help them on their way. They duly picked away through the Heracles defence again with precision. Bertrand Traoré then providing the service for Brobby, who wasn't going to miss that one, and the lead was doubled. Timely tonic for Francesco Farioli's in-form side and for their number 9. That was just the 3rd Eredivisie goal of the season for Brobby, who scored 18 of them last term. Just staying onside before touching home. He's likely to be even more important with Wout Weghorst ruled out for 6 weeks with a broken toe. Farioli was also without Kenneth Taylor and Yuri Bas due to illness, flu forcing a late change of plan, but he was still able to call for new signing Oliver Edvardsen at half-time, with goalscorer Götz making way as his minutes are managed. The Norwegian arrived from Go Ahead Eagles last month and adds to Ajax's attacking options. They were making it look easy at times. Diciança, one of those drafted in late on, released Kian Fitz-Jim at the start of the second half, who in turn couldn't quite find Brobby. But it wouldn't be long before Ajax extended their advantage. Brobby and captain Davy Klaassen were prominent For Jorel Hato provided the cross. For Edvardsen to score his first goal for his new club in super style. An improvised acrobatic finish made this a moment to remember in every sense. Edvardsen adding to the 8 Eredivisie goals he'd already scored for go-ahead this season. And it now looked only a matter of how many against their opponents from Almelo. Farioli praised the maturity of the performance. Whilst technical director Alex Kroos and the club's bosses had every reason to be happy with their transfer business last month. Ajax had been busy in the winter window, but it was a free agent signing from earlier in the season who then stepped back onto centre stage. Davy Klaassen returned for a third spell in Amsterdam in September, and you could see how much this goal meant to the captain. His 100th for the club was to set the seal on a formidable display. Scored in his previous 12 appearances, but the wait to reach the century was over. And Ajax were sending out a statement of intent for the rest of the season. From a player with 100 Ajax goals, to two who had both scored their first for the club within the last week. Christian Rasmussen opened his account at Fortuna Sittard and added another in the Europa League win in Belgium, in which 16-year-old Jordi Mokio became the youngest player ever to score for a Dutch club in Europe. They were both brought off the bench midway through the second half here. Heracles are only 4 points clear of the bottom three, despite being unbeaten in 9 games in all competitions before this. They're through to a cup semi-final with AZ, but the damage here had long since been done before captain Brian de Keersmaker threatened a consolation. Might not have managed a fifth to match their biggest win of the season, but there was plenty more for Ajax fans to celebrate before the evening was over, including a senior debut for Rayan Bunida. In the week, the highly rated Belgian prospect finally signed a new long-term contract at the club. The home fans happy to get a glimpse of the 18-year-old in action late on. The closest they came to extending their advantage yet further was thanks to some fine footwork from Rasmussen. For once, there was nobody there to finish it off. Then another significant substitution and another Ajax debut, this time for 17-year-old midfielder Sean Steur, whose introduction also provided Berghuis the chance to receive the acclaim his display deserved. Steur on in place of someone almost twice his age. It was the 4th time in a row Ajax had scored 4 goals against Heracles, making light work of their opponent's recent resilience as they return to the summit in style. A hint at the future in Amsterdam, but the present-day title charge is gathering pace. Indeed, Ajax were the weekend's biggest winners with that 4-0 scoreline, taking advantage of PSV dropping points for the 5th time in 6 Eredivisie matches now. Feyenoord were left frustrated as well by that goalless draw in Breda, as Groningen became the only side to win away from home in week 23, and the biggest movers up the table as a result of that. They jumped from 15th to 8th, but it's Ajax now 2 points clear at the top with a game in hand. They play that at home to go ahead on Sunday, one of just 4 rearranged fixtures next weekend. We'll see you there.